Olivia Pierce, 35, sat frozen in her luxury apartment, phone clutched to her ear, as the accidental call from her sister revealed the ugly truth. Her own family, the people whose mortgages, medical bills, and children's educations she had quietly funded for years, were mocking her childless status and career-focused life, while eagerly planning how to ask for more money. What they didn't know was that Olivia had heard everything, and she had already decided exactly how she would respond. Hey there! Before I dive into this family revenge drama that changed my life forever, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and if this story of family betrayal resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling community. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma comes full circle in this family saga. For as long as I could remember, I had been the responsible one in the Pierce family. While my siblings Lisa, 33, and Mark, 30, had spent their 20s making what my parents lovingly called youthful mistakes, I had been building a successful career in corporate finance. Our parents, Richard and Diane, had always emphasized family loyalty above all else. Blood is thicker than water, my father would say at every family gathering. At the end of the day, family is all you have. I had taken those words to heart, perhaps more seriously than anyone else. By 35, I had reached a senior position at one of New York's top investment firms. My apartment overlooked Central Park, and my life was filled with the trappings of success that had come from 15 years of 60-hour workweeks and sacrificed vacations. But despite my professional achievements, family gatherings always left me feeling slightly inadequate. When are you going to settle down and give us grandchildren? My mother would ask, ignoring my recent promotion. Lisa's already given us 3 beautiful grandkids. It didn't seem to matter that Lisa's beautiful family lived in a house I had helped them buy, or that I had quietly paid off her husband Tom's gambling debts twice in the past 3 years. My brother Mark wasn't much better. His entrepreneurial ventures had failed consistently, yet each time he approached me with another business idea, I would invest, knowing I would never see that money again, but hoping it would finally be the opportunity that would help him stand on his own feet. My parents had retired 5 years earlier than planned because I had offered to supplement their pension. The medical bills from my father's heart surgery and my mother's chronic back pain were all handled through my premium insurance policy, on which I had listed them as dependents. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family emergency, I was there, checkbook in hand, never asking for recognition or repayment. Family supports family, I would say, echoing my father's words back to him. He would nod approvingly, but there was always something in his expression that bothered me, a flicker of entitlement rather than gratitude. The dynamics in our family had settled into a comfortable pattern. My siblings would share stories of their children's achievements and marital bliss, while subtly dropping hints about financial struggles. My parents would beam at them with pride before turning to me with concerned expressions, wondering aloud if I was working too hard or if I was lonely in that big apartment all by yourself. I would smile and change the subject, never revealing how these comments stung or how much of my hard-earned money was funneled into keeping their lives afloat. Last Thanksgiving had been particularly difficult. Lisa had announced that her oldest daughter, my niece Emma, had been accepted to a prestigious private school. It's going to be a stretch financially, she had said with a meaningful glance in my direction, but we want the best for her. By dessert, I had already mentally calculated how I could rearrange my investment portfolio to cover the $40,000 annual tuition without disrupting the monthly stipends I already provided to various family members. Mark had spent the evening describing his new business plan, an app that would revolutionize the way people order takeout. He had cornered me by the fireplace, explaining that he just needed a small investment of $75,000 to get things off the ground. When I hesitated, reminding him of the 5 previous ventures I had funded, he had looked hurt. "I thought you believed in me, Liv," he had said, using the childhood nickname that always made me soften. That's what family does, right? Supports each other's dreams. I had returned to my apartment that night feeling drained, as I always did after family gatherings. But I continued to tell myself that this was what love looked like, supporting the people who matter most, even when it meant sacrificing your own needs. My therapist had gently suggested on multiple occasions that I was being taken advantage of, but I had dismissed her concerns. "You don't understand," I would tell her. "They're my family. They would do the same for me if our situations were reversed." In the quiet moments, though, alone in my expansive apartment with its view of the park, I sometimes wondered if that were true. Would they sacrifice for me the way I had for them? Would they give without expecting acknowledgement or repayment? These doubts would creep in late at night, but by morning, I would push them aside. After all, blood is thicker than water. Family is all you have. These mantras had guided my life for so long that questioning them felt like questioning my own identity. Little did I know that a simple phone call was about to shatter these illusions and force me to confront the painful truth about the family I had sacrificed so much to support. It was a Tuesday evening in April when my world turned upside down. I had just returned from a grueling day at the office, where I'd secured a major client that would likely lead to the partnership I'd been working toward for years. For once, I was looking forward to sharing good news with my family, news that had nothing to do with my financial support of them, but rather my own personal achievement. I kicked off my heels, poured myself a glass of Cabernet, and settled onto my balcony to enjoy the spring sunset over Central Park. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Lisa's face flashed on the screen. Smiling, I picked up. "Hello," I said. There was no response, just muffled background noise. Lisa had apparently pocket-dialed me, something that happened occasionally given her chaotic household with 3 children under the age of 10. I was about to hang up when I heard my name mentioned. "Olivia thinks she's so much better than us with her fancy job and apartment." Lisa's voice came through clearly, though distant, as if she had placed her phone down somewhere while talking to someone else. "You should have heard her last week, bragging about some promotion. As if anyone cares." I froze, wine glass halfway to my lips. This didn't sound like the sister who regularly called to thank me for my generosity and incredible support. "Well, she needs to feel important somehow," came my mother's voice in response. "No husband, no children. Just money and that cold apartment. It's actually quite sad when you think about it." The breath caught in my throat. I should hang up, I thought. This is private. They don't know I can hear them. But my finger remained hovering over the screen, unable to disconnect. "Did she transfer the money for Emma's school yet?" My father's voice now, gruff and impatient. "We need to make the deposit by Friday." "Not yet," Lisa replied, irritation evident in her tone. "I've been dropping hints, but you know how she is, always needs to feel like she's making the decision herself. I'll call her tomorrow and cry a little about how Tom and I are struggling. That usually does the trick." A strangled laugh escaped from someone, Mark, I realized with a sinking feeling. "The crying act always works," he chuckled. "I've got it down to an art now." "Oh, Liv, I'm so close to making this business work. I just need a little more support from someone who believes in me," he mimicked, his voice taking on a wheedling tone that I recognized with horrifying clarity. Meanwhile, that last investment paid for my trip to Vegas. "Mark." My mother sounded scandalized, but she was laughing too. "That's terrible." "Come on, Mom." Mark's voice grew defensive. "It's not like she can't afford it. And it's not like she's using that money for anything important. No kids to put through college, no family to support. Besides," Lisa chimed in, "she owes us. Remember how Dad and Mom always had to help her with homework? How they drove her to all those extra academic competitions? All those piano lessons and SAT prep courses while we had to make do with less? Now it's payback time." "I don't think we should talk about your sister like this," my father said, though his protest sounded weak. "She's been very generous." "Oh, Richard," my mother responded dismissively. "Don't act like you haven't thought the same thing. We invested more in Olivia growing up because she showed the most potential. Now she's successful, and we're benefiting from that investment. That's just how family works." "Exactly," Lisa said. "And it's not like she's going to stop. Olivia needs to feel needed. It's her whole identity. Without us depending on her, what does she have? No one else wants her. At least this way she gets to be Saint Olivia, the family savior." They all laughed at that, a sound that cut through me like glass. Even my father joined in this time. Well, I need her to be my savior with this new business idea, Mark said. It's actually legitimate this time, but the startup costs are higher. I'm thinking of asking for 100 grand. $100,000. My mother sounded impressed. Do you think she'll go for it? Of course she will, Mark replied confidently. I'll tell her it's an investment opportunity, not a gift. I'll promise returns that'll never materialize, and by the time she figures it out, I'll have another idea to distract her with. She's smart with business stuff, but when it comes to family, she's completely blind. Well, we need to coordinate, Lisa said, her voice taking on a calculating tone I'd never heard before. I need the school tuition, and we've been thinking about renovating the kitchen. Mom and Dad, didn't you mention wanting to take that cruise this summer? We should space out our requests so she doesn't get suspicious. Good thinking, my father replied. I'll wait until after you get the school money before I bring up the cruise. And Mark, maybe hold off on your business proposal until June or July. Fine, but I call dibs on Thanksgiving, Mark said. That's when she's most generous. Last year, she barely blinked at the 50 grand for my food delivery app concept. The app you never even started developing, Lisa snickered. Hey, the research phase involved a lot of takeout, Mark shot back, and they all dissolved into laughter again. I sat completely still on my balcony, the sunset now forgotten, my wine untouched. The conversation continued, my family members taking turns sharing stories about how they had manipulated me, coordinated their financial requests, and mocked my childless, supposedly lonely existence behind my back. Each word was a nail in the coffin of what I had believed our family to be. I should get going, my mother finally said. Olivia usually calls on Tuesday evenings to check in, and I need to sound appropriately grateful and concerned about her workaholic lifestyle. Make sure to mention how proud we all are of her success, Lisa advised. She eats that up. And don't forget to ask about the promotion, Mark added. She'll be so touched that you remembered, she'll probably send a bonus check. More laughter and then sounds of movement. I realized that Lisa was picking up her phone. In a panic, I quickly ended the call before she could discover I had been listening. For long minutes, I sat motionless, staring out at the darkening sky. My phone buzzed again, a text from Lisa. Hey sis. Just thinking about you. Call me when you have a chance? Emma has some exciting news about school. Love you. Red heart. I placed the phone screen down on the table and finally reached for my wine, drinking it in one long swallow. The family I had sacrificed everything for, my time, my money, my chance at my own family, had been using me all along. The betrayal cut deep, but something else was rising within me, a cold, clear anger that was burning away the fog of family obligation I had been living in for years. By the time I poured my second glass of wine, I knew exactly what I was going to do. That night, sleep evaded me entirely. Instead, I sat at my home office desk surrounded by financial statements, bank transfers, and years of email correspondence with my family members. The evidence of my financial support was overwhelming once I began to catalog it systematically. Over the past decade, I had given Lisa and her husband Tom approximately $387,000 for their house down payment, to pay off Tom's gambling debts, for various emergencies, and for the children's education funds. For Mark, the total was even higher, $423,000 across his 5 failed business ventures, plus the lease on his luxury apartment and the monthly loans that were never repaid. My parents had received around $290,000 between supplementing their retirement, medical expenses not covered by insurance, and the renovations on their Florida condo. All told, I had given my family over $1 million in the past 10 years alone. Money that could have gone toward my own dreams, perhaps the family I supposedly lacked, or the international humanitarian foundation I had always wanted to establish, or even just the sabbatical year I had fantasized about taking to travel and write. As dawn broke over the city, I made myself a strong cup of coffee and began to develop what I would later think of as the calculation. My family had been making calculations of their own, calculating my generosity, my gullibility, my need to be needed. Now it was my turn. First, I called my assistant and cleared my schedule for the next 3 days, citing a family emergency. The irony wasn't lost on me. Then I contacted my lawyer, my financial advisor, and my therapist, scheduling back-to-back appointments for that day. By 9 a.m., I was showered, dressed in my most empowering suit, and ready to reclaim my life. My lawyer, Eleanor, had been handling my affairs for years. She raised an eyebrow when I explained what I wanted to do, but she didn't try to talk me out of it. It's unusual, she admitted, but perfectly legal. Are you certain this is how you want to proceed? Family relationships can be complicated. They're less complicated than I thought, I replied with a bitter smile. I've spent years being manipulated and used. Now I'm setting boundaries and protecting myself. By the end of our tower meeting, we had drafted a series of documents that would form the foundation of my plan. Next was my financial advisor, Michael, who was more vocally concerned. Olivia, I understand you're hurt, he said after I explained the situation. But cutting them off entirely seems extreme. Perhaps a more measured approach. I've measured my approach for years, Michael, I interrupted. I've given and given while they've taken and taken. Did you know that my brother Mark used the investment money for his last startup to take a vacation to Las Vegas? Or that my sister Lisa has been deliberately manipulating me with fake crying to pay for her home renovations? Michael's expression shifted from concern to something harder. I didn't know that, no. Well, now you do. And now I do too. So please, help me secure my finances so that I can implement this plan effectively. By late afternoon, I was sitting across from my therapist, Dr. Chin, who had been gently suggesting for years that my relationship with my family wasn't healthy. I'm not here to say I told you so, she said after I recounted the overheard conversation. But I am curious about how you're feeling now that your suspicions have been confirmed. Angry, I admitted. Hurt. Betrayed. But also relieved? Like I've been carrying this weight of responsibility for so long, and now I can finally put it down. I don't have to keep trying to buy their love anymore. That's an important realization, Dr. Chen nodded. And your plan moving forward? I outlined the calculation for her, the systematic withdrawal of financial support, the conditions I would set, the boundaries I would establish. She listened without judgment, asking clarifying questions and helping me refine my approach. This isn't about revenge, I explained. It's about justice for them and for me. They need to learn how to stand on their own feet, and I need to learn how to have relationships that aren't based on financial dependency. That sounds healthy, Dr. Chen agreed. But be prepared for significant pushback. People don't usually relinquish power or privilege willingly, and your family has grown accustomed to both at your expense. I nodded, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. I'm ready. The next day was devoted to practical matters. I visited my bank and had my accounts restructured, removing my parents as beneficiaries from several investments. I contacted Emma's private school and informed them that while this year's tuition would be paid as promised, they should not expect further payments from me in the future. I canceled the automatic transfers to my siblings' accounts that had been quietly supplementing their incomes for years. I also took steps to protect myself emotionally. I booked a month-long stay at a wellness retreat in Arizona for immediately after the family confrontation, giving myself space to heal and reflect. I reached out to friends I had neglected while prioritizing family obligations, scheduling dinners and weekend trips for the coming months. On the third day, I began documenting everything. I created spreadsheets showing every dollar I had given to each family member, every promise they had made and broken, every manipulation tactic they had used. I printed emails where they had asked for money, texts where they had thanked me for my generosity, while privately mocking me. I even transcribed what I could remember from the accidental phone call, the words still seared into my memory. Then I wrote 4 letters. One to my parents, one to Lisa and Tom, one to Mark, and one final letter addressed to all of them collectively. In these letters, I poured out everything I had been holding back for years, my hurt at being valued only for my financial contributions, my anger at being manipulated, my sadness at realizing that the family bonds I had cherished were largely illusory. But I also included something else, a path forward. Conditions under which I would consider rebuilding relationships with them, based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than financial dependency. It wouldn't be easy for any of us, but it was the only way I could envision having my family in my life without being consumed by resentment. As I sealed the final envelope, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first. The calculation wasn't just about money, it was about recalculating the value I placed on myself versus the value I placed on maintaining toxic family relationships. The next step would be the hardest, the confrontation. I decided to call a family meeting at my parents' house for the coming Saturday. I texted each of them, "Family meeting this Saturday at 2 p.m. I have important news to share. Please make sure everyone is present." The responses came quickly, filled with concern and curiosity. Little did they know that the Saint Olivia they had taken for granted was about to show them exactly how much their financial security depended on the sister and daughter they had been mocking behind her back. Saturday arrived with an unusual clarity. The spring sky was a perfect blue as I drove to my parents' suburban home in Westchester County. I had chosen to drive myself rather than take my usual car service. I wanted the option to leave on my own terms when the confrontation was over. My Mercedes pulled into the familiar driveway behind Lisa's minivan and Mark's leased BMW. For a moment, I sat in the car, breathing deeply and centering myself. The manila envelope on the passenger seat contained all the documentation I had prepared, financial records, the letters, and the legal documents my lawyer had drawn up. I had rehearsed what I would say, but I knew that once emotions got involved, anything could happen. "You've got this," I whispered to myself, picking up the envelope and stepping out of the car. My mother opened the door before I could knock, greeting me with the usual kiss on the cheek and critical once-over. "You look tired, sweetheart," she said, ushering me inside. "Are you getting enough sleep? That job of yours works you too hard." I didn't respond to the familiar critique, simply offering a tight smile as I followed her into the living room where everyone was waiting. My father sat in his usual armchair, looking curious but relaxed. Lisa and Tom occupied the love seat, their faces showing anticipation, no doubt hoping my important news involved financial windfalls for them. Mark lounged on the sofa, scrolling through his phone until I entered. "The woman of the hour," he exclaimed, jumping up to give me a hug. "We've been placing bets on your big news. I'm guessing partnership at the firm? Lisa thinks you've finally met someone special." I extricated myself from his embrace, feeling the falseness of it in a way I never had before. Had his affection always been this performative, or was I just now able to see it clearly? "Why don't we all sit down?" I suggested, my voice calm despite the pounding of my heart. Something in my tone must have alerted them that this wasn't a celebration. Concerned glances were exchanged as everyone took their seats. I remained standing, the envelope clutched in my hands. "Is everything okay, Olivia?" my father asked, leaning forward. "You're not sick, are you?" "I'm not sick, Dad," I assured him. "In fact, I've never seen things more clearly than I do right now." I opened the envelope and removed the first document, a spreadsheet detailing every financial contribution I had made to the family over the past decade. I placed it on the coffee table. 3 days ago, Lisa accidentally called me, I began, my voice steady. She didn't realize her phone had dialed my number. "I heard a very interesting conversation between all of you." The room went completely still. Lisa's face drained of color, while my mother's hand flew to her throat. "I heard how you coordinate your financial requests to me. I heard how Mark used the money for his business ventures to take trips to Las Vegas. I heard how Lisa uses fake crying to manipulate me into paying for things. I heard how you all mock my childless, supposedly lonely existence while eagerly planning ways to extract more money from me. Olivia, I don't know what you think you heard, but," my father started. "Please don't insult my intelligence by denying it," I cut him off, my voice hardening. "I heard everything. And it forced me to confront something my therapist has been gently suggesting for years, that our family dynamic is toxic and built almost entirely on financial dependency." I pulled out more papers from the envelope, laying them on the table one by one as I spoke. "This is a record of the $387,000 I've given Lisa and Tom over the years. This is the $423,000 I've given to Mark. And this is the $290,000 I've provided to you, Mom and Dad. Together with smaller expenses I've covered, that's over $1 million in 10 years. Their shocked expressions might have been comical under different circumstances. Mark had the decency to look ashamed, while Tom seemed completely stunned, shooting an accusing glance at his wife. Apparently, even he hadn't realized the full extent of my financial support. Now, I want to be very clear, I continued. I don't regret helping my family when you genuinely needed it. What I regret is allowing that help to create a dynamic where I'm valued only for my checkbook, where my accomplishments are privately mocked, and where my generosity is taken as a sign of weakness rather than strength. That's not true, my mother protested, tears forming in her eyes. We love you for who you are, not just what you give us. Do you? I asked simply, because that's not what I heard in that conversation. What I heard was my family laughing about how easy it is to manipulate me, how you've been coordinating your requests to maximize how much money you can get from me, and how you see my financial support not as generosity, but as something you're entitled to, repayment for supposed investments in my childhood. I pulled out the next set of documents. These are the changes I've made to my financial arrangements over the past 3 days. I've removed all of you as beneficiaries from my investment accounts. I've canceled the automatic transfers to your accounts. I've informed Emma's private school that while I'll honor this year's tuition payment, they shouldn't expect further payments from me. You can't do that. Lisa exploded, her shock transforming into anger. We're counting on that money. Emma will be devastated if she has to leave her school. I can and I have, I replied calmly. And if Emma's education is truly a priority, I'm sure you and Tom can find a way to make it work. Perhaps by selling the boat Tom bought with the money I gave you to pay off his gambling debts. Tom's face reddened, and he looked down at his hands. Olivia, please, my father said, his voice gentler now. We may have spoken thoughtlessly, but we're your family. You can't just cut us off like this. I'm not just cutting you off, I corrected him. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. I pulled out the 4 letters I had written. These explain my position in more detail and outline the conditions under which I would consider financial support in the future. I handed the letters to each of them, keeping the collective family letter for last. The conditions are simple, I explained as they stared at the sealed envelopes. First, each of you needs to take responsibility for your own financial well-being. Get jobs if you don't have them, live within your means, and stop expecting me to subsidize your lifestyle choices. Mark started to protest, but I held up a hand to silence him. Second, any future financial support will be strictly conditional and contractual. If Mark wants investment in a genuine business, he'll need a proper business plan that will be vetted by my financial advisors. If Lisa and Tom need help with the children's education, they'll need to demonstrate that they're contributing the maximum they can before I step in. And Mom and Dad, if you need help with medical expenses, I'll require transparency about your finances and insurance coverage. You're treating us like business associates, not family, my mother said, looking wounded. No, Mom. I'm treating you like adults who are capable of making responsible decisions. Something that should have happened long ago. I placed the final letter on the coffee table. This last letter is for all of you. It explains that I'm taking a step back from family gatherings and interactions for the next 3 months, while I process this betrayal and decide what kind of relationship, if any, I want to have with you moving forward. The silence that followed was deafening. My family sat frozen, the reality of what was happening slowly sinking in. The gravy train they had been riding for a decade was coming to an abrupt halt, and they were facing the consequences of their actions for perhaps the first time in their adult lives. I'll be leaving for a wellness retreat tomorrow, I continued when no one spoke. I won't be reachable for at least a month. I suggest you use that time to reflect on what kind of relationship you want to have with me that isn't based on what I can give you financially. Lisa was crying now, but unlike the manipulative tears I'd apparently been falling for all these years, these looked genuine. Olivia, please, she sobbed. We need you. No, I corrected her gently. You need my money. There's a difference. And when you figure out that difference, when you learn to value me for who I am rather than what I can provide, then maybe we can start rebuilding our relationship. I picked up my purse, prepared to leave, but paused to add one final thought. Dad, you always said blood is thicker than water. But the full proverb is actually the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the relationships we choose and nurture are stronger than those we're born into. I've honored my familial obligations for years while you've taken advantage of my loyalty. Now it's your turn to decide what family really means to you." With that, I turned and walked toward the door, my steps lighter than they had been in years. "Wait," my father called after me, his voice breaking. "Please, Olivia. We can fix this." I turned back one last time. "I hope so, Dad. But that fixing starts with all of you, not with me." I know this family confrontation might be bringing up a lot of emotions for those of you watching. We've all had moments where we've had to stand up for ourselves against people who should have had our backs. If this story is resonating with you so far, please hit that like button to let me know you're with me. And if you want to find out what happened after I walked out that door, how my family responded, and whether we ever rebuilt our relationship, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of this journey. Now, let's continue with what happened after I left my family speechless that Saturday afternoon. The month I spent at the Desert Serenity Wellness Retreat in Sedona was exactly what I needed. Nestled among the stunning red rock formations, I had time and space to process my emotions without the constant pull of family obligations or work responsibilities. Each morning began with meditation as the sun rose over the desert landscape, followed by therapy sessions, hiking, and workshops on setting healthy boundaries. For the first time in my adult life, I was focusing entirely on my own healing and growth. During the first week, my phone remained powered off. My assistant had strict instructions to contact the retreat only in case of true work emergencies, and I had informed my family not to expect any communication. The digital detox was jarring at first. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, anticipating the usual barrage of family emergencies that required my immediate attention. But as the days passed, I felt the constant tension in my shoulders begin to ease. My therapist at the retreat, Dr. Michaels, specialized in family trauma. "What you're experiencing is grief," she explained during one of our sessions. "You're mourning the family you thought you had, the relationships you believed in. That's a profound loss." I nodded, tears welling up as the truth of her words hit home. I keep wondering if I overreacted. If I should have given them another chance to explain. "That's natural," Dr. Michaels assured me. "But remember, this isn't about one overheard conversation. This is about a pattern of behavior that's been happening for years. The conversation just confirmed what you already suspected deep down." She was right. The signs had been there all along. I had simply been unwilling to see them, too invested in my identity as the family provider, the responsible one, the successful sister who could fix everything with her checkbook. During my third week at the retreat, I finally turned my phone back on, bracing myself for the flood of messages I expected from my family. There were indeed dozens of texts and emails, but they weren't what I had anticipated. The earliest messages were angry and accusatory. Lisa had sent a series of texts the very night of the confrontation. "How could you do this to us? To the kids? They're your nieces and nephew, for God's sake. You're being completely unreasonable. We made some thoughtless comments and you're punishing us like we committed a crime. Tom says we should see you for the promises you made about Emma's education. Is that what you want?" Legal battles within the family. Mark's initial messages were similarly hostile. "Real mature, Liv. Dropping a bomb like that and then running away to some spa. Typical. You know what? Keep your money. I don't need it. My new business partner is thrilled to have me on board with my experience." My parents' approach had been more measured, but still missed the point entirely. My father had sent a long email explaining that I had misinterpreted the conversation, that they were just blowing off steam, and that of course they valued me for more than my financial contributions. My mother had left tearful voicemails begging me to reconsider, saying that family should forgive each other's mistakes. None of them had acknowledged the deeper issue, the years of manipulation, the coordinated efforts to extract money from me, the fundamental imbalance in our relationships. None of them had taken responsibility for their actions or shown genuine remorse beyond being caught and facing consequences. But then, about 2 weeks after the confrontation, the tone of the messages began to shift. Lisa sent a text that simply read, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. When you're ready to talk, I am too. No pressure, no expectations." Mark's latest email included the line, "Started a job at Ryan's construction company. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. Figuring some things out about myself. My mother had sent a handwritten letter to the retreat that arrived during my 4th week. It was different from her earlier messages, more reflective, less defensive. "I've been so focused on what you could give us that I stopped seeing who you are," she wrote. "I'm ashamed of that now." Even my father, the proudest of us all, had left a voicemail saying simply, "You were right about a lot of things, Olivia. I hope we'll have the chance to discuss them when you're ready." These messages gave me hope that perhaps my family was beginning to understand the depth of the problem, but I was cautious. Words were easy, it was actions that would show whether real change was possible. On my last day at the retreat, I had a final session with Dr. Michaels. "What are you most afraid of as you prepare to go back to your regular life?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "I'm afraid of falling back into old patterns," I admitted. "Of seeing them in pain or struggle and immediately reaching for my checkbook instead of allowing them to solve their own problems." "That's insightful," she nodded. "The caretaking role has been your identity for so long that it might feel uncomfortable to let it go. But remember, true support sometimes means not stepping in." I left the retreat feeling centered and clear about my boundaries in a way I never had before. The woman who drove back to New York was not the same one who had fled to Arizona a month earlier. I was stronger now, more certain of my worth beyond what I could provide for others. Returning to my apartment, I was struck by how peaceful it felt. The space that my family had described as cold and lonely now felt like a sanctuary, a place where I was valued simply for being myself, where no demands were made beyond those I chose to accept. The first test of my new boundaries came just 3 days after my return, when Lisa called. I let it go to voicemail initially, listening to her message before deciding whether to engage. "Hey, Olivia." Her voice sounded different, hesitant, lacking the usual false brightness. No pressure to call back. I wanted to let you know that Tom and I have enrolled Emma in the public school gifted program for next year. The counselor actually thinks it might be better for her social development than the private school. Anyway, I'm not calling for anything, just thought you might want to know. We're doing okay. Hope you are too. I waited until the following day to call her back. Our conversation was awkward at first, both of us carefully navigating this new territory where financial support wasn't the primary connection between us. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Lisa said eventually, "about how I've treated you, how we all have. It wasn't right, and I'm truly sorry." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, trying to hear the sincerity in her words rather than the skepticism in my own heart. "Tom and I have been meeting with a financial advisor," she continued. "We've made a budget for the first time in our marriage. It's tight, but we're making it work. Tom's even taken on weekend shifts at his brother's landscaping company." It was the first time Lisa had ever discussed taking financial responsibility without it being followed by a request for money. It felt like a small but significant step. Mark's approach to our new reality was different, but equally surprising. He showed up at my apartment one evening with a bottle of my favorite wine and takeout from the Thai restaurant we had loved as teenagers. "Peace offering," he said when I opened the door, looking uncharacteristically nervous. I come bearing pad thai and a long overdue apology. Over dinner, he was more honest than I had ever seen him. "I've been a leech," he admitted. "Not just with you, but with everyone in my life. Always looking for the shortcut, the easy money, the way to get what I want without putting in the work. That's not who I want to be anymore." "What changed?" I asked. He twirled noodles around his fork, avoiding my eyes. "Reality hit pretty hard after you left that day. I kept waiting for someone else to step in and fix things, but no one did. I had to look at myself in the mirror and admit I'm 30 years old with nothing to show for it except a string of failures that my sister bankrolled." Mark had indeed taken the construction job with his friend Ryan. It was entry-level work, hard, physical labor that left him exhausted at the end of each day. But there was a new pride in his voice when he talked about it, a sense of accomplishment that none of his entrepreneurial ventures had ever given him. "I'm saving up," he told me. "Slowly, but it's happening. I've got this idea for a small contracting business focusing on eco-friendly renovations. Ryan's teaching me the ropes, and I'm taking night classes in business administration at the community college." "That sounds like a solid plan," I said, genuinely impressed. I'm not asking for investment, he added quickly. That's not why I'm telling you. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. To be someone you can be proud to call your brother, not because of what you've done for me, but because of what I'm doing for myself. My parents took longer to come around. The first family dinner I attended after the confrontation was tense, with my father particularly struggling to adapt to our new dynamic. Old habits surfaced. My mother mentioned a friend's luxury cruise. My father complained about the rising cost of golf club membership. But when these comments weren't met with offers of financial assistance, they eventually tapered off. By Thanksgiving, 6 months after the confrontation, things had shifted noticeably. We gathered at my parents' house, but the atmosphere was different. Lisa and Tom brought homemade sides rather than store-bought ones, proudly discussing how they were teaching the kids about budgeting and the value of money. Mark arrived directly from a job site, tired but satisfied with the day's work. My parents, while still adjusting, made genuine efforts to ask about my life beyond my career and finances. There was an authenticity to our interactions that had been missing for years. We talked about real struggles and small victories, shared genuine laughter, and connected as adults with separate lives rather than as financial dependents and provider. The most meaningful moment came after dinner, when my father asked to speak with me privately. We walked out to the backyard, the November air crisp around us. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what you said, he began, hands deep in his pockets. About the real meaning of that proverb, the blood of the covenant being thicker than the water of the womb. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. I've always believed that family obligation was non-negotiable, he said. That's how I was raised. But watching how things have changed these past months, seeing Mark taking responsibility, Lisa and Tom figuring things out on their own, I've realized that maybe I was wrong about what family really means. He turned to face me fully, his eyes sincere. I'm proud of you, Olivia. Not because of your success or your generosity, but because you had the courage to demand better from all of us. To show us that Real family supports each other's growth, not just their bank accounts. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Real life rarely provides those. There were still awkward moments, old patterns that occasionally resurfaced, trust that needed to be rebuilt slowly over time. But as I drove back to my apartment that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in relation to my family for a very long time: hope. A year after the accidental phone call that changed everything, my relationship with my family had evolved into something I would have once thought impossible: a balanced exchange between adults who genuinely cared for each other. Lisa had returned to work part-time as an interior designer, a career she had abandoned when her first child was born. She discovered that she still had a passion for it, and the additional income allowed her family to maintain a comfortable lifestyle without my subsidies. More importantly, the pride she took in her work and contributing to her family's well-being transformed her. She was happier, more confident, and our relationship shifted from one of financial dependency to one of mutual respect and genuine sisterly affection. I never realized how much I was missing by letting others handle the hard parts of life, she admitted during one of our newly established monthly sister lunches. I thought I was taking the easy road by relying on you, but I was actually making things harder for myself in the long run. Tom had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation. After acknowledging his gambling addiction, something the family had long enabled by covering his debts, he began attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and working with a therapist specializing in addiction. He took full responsibility for the financial strain his behavior had caused and worked out payment plans for the debts he still owed. I should have done this years ago, he told me one evening when I visited their home. Every time you bailed me out, you thought you were helping, but you were just making it easier for me to avoid facing my problem. My nieces and nephew were adjusting to a new normal as well. Initially upset about leaving their private school, they had adapted well to the gifted program at the local public school. More significantly, they were learning valuable lessons about money, responsibility, and the satisfaction that comes from earning something rather than having it given to you. Emma's saving up for her own laptop, Lisa shared proudly. She's been babysitting and helping elderly neighbors with yard work. The laptop she'll eventually get might not be as fancy as the one we could have bought her before, but she'll value it so much more. Mark's journey had been the most unexpected. The construction job he had initially taken out of desperation had turned into a genuine career path. He had indeed saved enough to start a small contracting business focusing on eco-friendly renovations, and while it was growing slowly, it was growing on solid foundations rather than the quicksand of borrowed money and hasty decisions. "I've never stuck with anything this long," he admitted when he showed me his modest new office. "Turns out, there's a satisfaction in building something real that I never got from all those get-rich-quick schemes." He had even started dating someone, a project manager he had met through work. She was practical, down-to-earth, and clearly good for him. "She wouldn't give me the time of day if I was still the guy who lived off his sister and jumped from one failed business to another," Mark told me. "Having her in my life is just one more reason I'm grateful for the wake-up call you gave us all." My parents had perhaps struggled the most with the new dynamic, their generational beliefs about family obligation deeply ingrained. But even they had made significant adjustments. They had downsized from their large suburban home to a comfortable condo that better suited their needs and budget. My father had taken a part-time consulting position at his old firm, which gave him both additional income and a renewed sense of purpose. "I didn't realize how much I missed being useful," he confessed during a Sunday visit. "Retirement is fine, but there's something to be said for knowing your experience and knowledge still have value." My mother had found her own unexpected path. With the encouragement of a neighbor, she had started volunteering at a local literacy program, teaching English to immigrants. The work brought her a sense of fulfillment that weekly lunches and country club memberships never had. "I spent so many years focused on appearances," she reflected. "On what the neighbors would think, on maintaining a certain lifestyle. Now I'm doing something that actually matters to people who genuinely need help." It puts everything in perspective. As for me, the transformation had been equally profound. Without the constant drain on my finances and emotional energy, I had finally pursued some long-deferred dreams. I had taken a 2-month sabbatical to travel through Southeast Asia, something I had always wanted to do but had never prioritized over family obligations. I had established a small foundation focused on financial literacy for young women, using my expertise to help others avoid the pitfalls of dependency relationships. Most significantly, I had begun dating again after years of putting my personal life on hold. James was a professor of environmental law I had met through a mutual friend, intelligent, kind, and completely uninterested in my financial status. Our relationship was developing slowly but meaningfully, built on shared values and genuine connection rather than what either of us could provide for the other. The family's new dynamic was tested when Mark's business faced a significant challenge. A major client had backed out unexpectedly, leaving him with expenses he had already incurred and no income to cover them. In the past, this would have been an automatic trigger for a call to me, a tearful explanation, and a quick transfer of funds to solve the problem. Instead, Mark called a family meeting not to ask for money, but to ask for advice. We gathered around my parents' dining table as Mark laid out the situation, presenting his financial statements and the options he was considering. Together, we brainstormed solutions. Lisa offered to connect him with some of her design clients who might need renovation work. Tom suggested negotiating extended payment terms with suppliers. My father proposed a meeting with his former business partner who specialized in construction law. I listened, impressed by everyone's practical suggestions and Mark's openness to receiving help that wasn't financial. When he finally turned to me, it wasn't with the expectation I had grown so accustomed to seeing. "Liv, you understand business better than any of us," he said. "From your professional perspective, what would you advise? Not, can you help me out, or I just need a small loan. Just a straightforward request for my expertise rather than my checkbook." I offered some suggestions about restructuring his cash flow and diversifying his client base, help that empowered him rather than enabling dependency. Mark weathered the crisis without financial bailouts. It was harder, certainly, and took longer to resolve than if I had simply written a check. But the pride he felt in overcoming the challenge through his own resourcefulness and the family's non-financial support was worth far more in the long run. On the anniversary of the confrontation, I invited the entire family to dinner at my apartment, something I had rarely done in the past, preferring to keep my personal space separate from family obligations. As we gathered around my dining table, the conversation flowed naturally, touching on work successes and challenges, the children's activities, plans for the future. Not once did anyone hint at financial difficulties or make subtle appeals for help. Instead, Lisa shared her excitement about a major design project she had landed. Mark discussed his plans to hire his first employee. My parents talked about the community garden they had helped establish at their condo complex. Looking around at these people who shared my blood, but who had become, at last, true family in the deeper sense, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for that accidental phone call a year ago. It had been painful, one of the most difficult experiences of my life, but it had ultimately given us all something priceless, authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. As we raised our glasses in a toast, my father caught my eye across the table. "To family," he said simply. "The real kind." 2 years after the fateful phone call, I stood in the bright sunshine of a June afternoon, watching as my family gathered for a celebration unlike any we had shared before. We were on the grounds of a small community center that my foundation had helped renovate, a project that held special significance for all of us. The Financial Futures Foundation had been my passion project for the past 18 months. Using my expertise in finance and my personal experience with family financial dynamics, I had created an organization dedicated to promoting financial literacy and independence, particularly for women from backgrounds where such knowledge was not readily available. Today marked the official opening of our first dedicated space, a welcoming center where people could come for workshops, counseling, and practical assistance, with everything from creating their first budget to understanding investment options. What made the day even more meaningful was that every member of my family had contributed to making it happen. Mark's contracting company had handled the renovations at cost, incorporating sustainable materials and energy-efficient systems. His business had grown steadily over the past 2 years, built on hard work and genuine expertise rather than get-rich-quick schemes. He now employed a team of 6 and had earned a reputation for reliability and quality, words that would never have been associated with him in the past. Lisa had volunteered her interior design skills, creating a space that was both professional and welcoming. Her own career had flourished as she built a client base that valued her talent for balancing aesthetics with practicality. She had recently been featured in a regional design magazine, an achievement that meant more to her than any luxury purchase ever had. Tom had become one of our most dedicated volunteers, using his own experience with gambling addiction and recovery to help others facing similar challenges. 2 years sober, he now mentored others through Gamblers Anonymous and had trained to become a certified financial counselor, specializing in addiction-related financial recovery. Even my parents had found ways to contribute meaningfully. My mother taught English and basic financial vocabulary to immigrant women through the foundation, while my father offered his business experience as a mentor to young entrepreneurs. They had both discovered a sense of purpose that golf games and social lunches had never provided. As I watched them all mingling with the foundation staff and the community members who had come for the opening, I felt a wave of pride that had nothing to do with being the financial provider. This was something we had built together, each contributing their unique strengths to create something meaningful. James appeared at my side, sliding an arm around my waist. Our relationship had deepened over the past year, evolving into a partnership that enriched both our lives. He had been unfailingly supportive of the foundation, offering legal advice and helping to navigate the complexities of establishing a nonprofit organization. "Look at what you've created," he murmured, nodding toward my family. "What we've all created," I corrected him. I couldn't have done this alone. And that was perhaps the most significant change of all. I had learned that true strength wasn't found in taking on everyone's burdens single-handedly, but in creating a network of support where everyone contributed what they could and grew stronger in the process. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Each family member spoke briefly about their contribution to the center and what the project meant to them. When it was my turn to take the microphone, I looked out at the gathered faces, my family, the foundation staff, community members, James, and felt a moment of profound clarity. 2 years ago, I learned a difficult but necessary lesson about the difference between helping and enabling. I began. I thought that taking care of everyone's financial needs was an expression of love, but I was actually preventing the people I cared about most from discovering their own strength and capacity. I met the eyes of my family members, seeing acknowledgement and understanding in their expressions. This foundation was born from that realization that true financial empowerment isn't about handouts, but about education, support, and the tools to build independence. Everyone deserves the dignity of standing on their own feet and the satisfaction of solving their own problems. I gestured to the renovated building behind me. This center represents a new beginning, not just for the community members who will find support here, but for my family as well. It symbolizes the transformation of our relationships from dependency to partnership, from obligation to choice. After the formal ceremony, as we shared refreshments and conversation with the attendees, Lisa pulled me aside. "Do you remember what you said to us that day at Mom and Dad's?" she asked. "About the real meaning of blood is thicker than water, that the relationships we choose and nurture are stronger than those we're born into." I nodded, surprised that she had remembered those exact words. "I think we've finally become that kind of family," she said, squeezing my hand. "The kind that chooses each other every day, not out of obligation or for what we can get, but because we genuinely want to be part of each other's lives." Later that evening, we gathered for a more private celebration at my apartment, now a warm, welcoming space that I shared with James. As we sat around the dinner table, the conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the comfortable silences of people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. Looking around at these faces that I had known all my life, but had only truly come to understand in the past 2 years, I felt a deep sense of peace. The accidental phone call that had revealed my family's true attitudes had been devastating at the time, but it had ultimately been the catalyst for a transformation none of us could have imagined. My parents now lived comfortably within their means, finding fulfillment in community service rather than status symbols. Lisa and Tom had built a more authentic marriage based on partnership rather than dependency, modeling financial responsibility for their children. Mark had discovered the satisfaction of earned success, building his business one client at a time and developing genuine expertise in his field. And I had found freedom from the burden of being everyone's safety net, allowing me to pursue my own dreams and to build a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values rather than financial dynamics. As we raised our glasses in a toast, I thought about how far we had all come from that painful day of confrontation. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks, moments of tension, old patterns that sometimes resurfaced. But we had persevered, committed to creating something better than what we had before. To family, I said, echoing my father's toast from a year before. Not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose to become. To family, they echoed, and in their eyes I saw not the entitlement and calculation that had once characterized our relationships, but genuine love, respect, and gratitude for the journey we had taken together. That night, after everyone had gone and James and I were cleaning up, he asked a question that made me pause. "Do you ever regret confronting them? Taking such a drastic step?" I considered this carefully before answering. "I regret that it was necessary," I said finally. "I regret that our relationships had deteriorated to the point where such a dramatic intervention was the only way forward. But no, I don't regret doing it. Without that confrontation, we'd still be trapped in the same toxic pattern, me enabling their dependency, them resenting me even while taking advantage of my support." James nodded, understanding. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions." "Exactly," I agreed. "Real love isn't about making things easy for the people you care about. It's about wanting what's best for them in the long run, even when that means allowing them to struggle and grow through that struggle." As I fell asleep that night, I thought about the strange twist of fate that had led to that accidental phone call. If Lisa hadn't pocket-dialed me at precisely that moment, would I ever have found the courage to confront the imbalance in our family dynamics? Would my siblings have discovered their own capabilities? Would my parents have found purpose beyond material comfort? Sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most necessary growth. The betrayal I had felt hearing my family's true thoughts had been devastating, but it had ultimately freed all of us from roles that were limiting our potential and poisoning our relationships. 2 years later, the family that gathered to celebrate the foundation opening was unrecognizable from the one that had sat in my parents' living room calculating how to extract more money from me. We had become something better, something genuine, a family bound not by financial dependency, but by mutual respect, shared values, and chosen connection. The accidental call had revealed an ugly truth, but it had also created the possibility for something beautiful to emerge from the ruins of what I had thought family meant. And for that, despite all the pain, I would always be grateful. As I wrap up the story of family betrayal and ultimate redemption, I'd love to hear if any of you have experienced similar wake-up calls in your relationships. Has there been a moment when you discovered a painful truth that ultimately led to positive change? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through something similar right now. If this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and the sometimes difficult path to authentic relationships. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me, and remember, sometimes the most painful revelations can lead to the most beautiful transformations. I'll see you in the next video.